It really speaks to a general theme of how unhealthy a couple things are. One of them is envy, and the other is resentment. When you get wrapped up in somebody else doing better than you, when you deserve to do better, it's going to ruin you. It's going to affect literally everything in your life.
The amount of time that is wasted on something like, feeling upset because somebody else has something that you don't. There's only so much time in the day. That's not a good way to spend any of it.
I take all the little things that get done and think, all right, I'm a tiny bit better off than I was 10 minutes ago. Honestly, what more do you need?
We're not saying that you can't still recognize that things suck, because things do suck. The difference is that won't prevent you from doing what you need to do. Hey, welcome to the Create Unknown, the home of Make Something Mean Something. It is TCU's Day. We are here live with our patrons on Discord. I am Kevin Lieber, and with me, as always, is Matthew Tabor.
Yeah, and we're continuing our boycott of guests. If you missed last week and you haven't listened to it yet, we explained that we're going real light with guests in December because December is insane for everybody in the YouTube community, streaming, stuff like that. It's just the busiest time of year in terms of sponsorships and getting content out by the end of the year. There's just all these reasons why it's kind of a nightmare. And that's not even counting the holiday logistical aspects. So we're taking this time to just go over some of the topics we've been talking about literally all year, and in some cases, several years. And we got going on one last week, and since then, Kevin, you've thought about a little bit more detail that you wanted to say on it.
Yeah, I literally pulled a George Costanza. If you've ever seen that episode of Seinfeld where he's like trying to insult, he's trading insults with this guy, and he couldn't think of a good insult on the fly, and he's like driving home from work and he thinks of it and he needs to turn around. That was me. That was me. Like I was like, oh, I should have explained this way. So if you missed...
This is your jerk store moment?
Yeah, the jerk store called. Yeah, they're all out of you. What is the ocean called? And they're all out of shrimp.
Yeah.
Something like that. So last week's episode, if you missed out on, was about YouTubers running out of ideas, like running out of novel ideas to do that would make great YouTube videos. And my feeling was that that's already happening, and it will, continue to happen pretty quickly, I think, over the next 5 years or so, in which eventually sort of all of the ideas will have been done, and we'll see mostly repeats of ideas. I tried to explain how there are like several limiting factors to making a good YouTube video. I mentioned things like it has to be something legal. It has to be something ethical. It has to be something like physically capable by the bounds of reality to accomplish. One of the checkbox things that I didn't list that's actually really, really important is the fact that it has to be a subject that other people are interested in. It has to be something that other people want to watch. It has to have some sort of connection to something that other people decide, that an audience decides, I want to see that. And that does not include any idea ever. So you can have what's ostensibly an infinite number of new ideas. I don't think the number is actually infinite, but I think it's functionally infinite. It's so astronomical that, we really won't run out.
Yeah.
But most of those ideas, nobody is going to want to watch. Like, they're not just going to be interested in every single iteration of an idea. So by the time you whittle all of this stuff down and get to a point where you do have an idea that other people want to watch, all of a sudden, in my opinion, it's dramatically reducing the overall number of like valid video ideas.
Yeah.
Or successful video ideas, like videos that will be successful.
I have two things that I want to ask you about with this. And one of them is it ever valid or viable to take something that is an idea nobody's interested in, do the thing, and then hope they become interested in it?
Absolutely. That's definitely. And I think that a lot of successful YouTubers have done that. I think that's how you find new ground. That's how you break new ground, is you do something.
Just take that chance.
Yeah, you do something that you're super interested and passionate about, and then perhaps you find an audience. That's totally valid. But that's hard. That's really hard to do, but it happens. It's possible.
Yeah. Yeah, and the other thing is it's getting easier to find the people who are in your weird, tiny little niche. I mean, if there are 8 billion people in the world and something like 0.00001% of them are interested in your thing, that's still enough people to be viable. That's still like 8,000 people. If you have 8,000 loyal fans, life is pretty good. You can certainly make a living out of that. As it gets harder to get massively popular, at least it's getting easier to get extremely niche popular. I don't know how tight those narrow niches can go. I guess we'll find out, and I think a lot of people are finding out right now. But in general, I think what you've just said is sound. That it's hard to come up with an idea that meets all of those criteria and also actually interests people.
Right. Like one example of that I thought of for some reason was because we were talking about Alan Pan's giving snakes their legs back video, which went viral because that was a great idea. And he built a little robot to stick a snake in that had like robot legs, and the snake could cruise along with these robot legs. That is an example of a great idea of what do I do with the category of snake that people will be interested in, okay? And giving snake its legs back, boom, that is a thing that like a lot of people think is a great idea, and they clicked on it and went viral, and there were articles written about it. But my point is you could then say, okay, what are some other ideas of like great videos to do with snake? And while you can come up with a really long list of like using a snake as a hockey stick, or like building a house out of snakes, like you could come up with any number of ideas, but that doesn't mean A, they'll be ethical, B, they'll be allowed on YouTube, C, anybody's going to want to watch that. So
yeah.
That was a point I don't think that I hammered home with enough clarity, that was like in my head but didn't come out of my mouth well enough. And I hope that it makes a little bit more sense now.
I think it does. And a lot of the themes that we talked about in the last two episodes are going to play into tonight. Are you ready, Kevin, to lose, I don't know, would you say a third of our audience? Do you want to do that?
Sure. Yeah.
Is that a fair estimate? About a third? 33
to 99%. Yeah.
Well, look, my feed on stuff like Twitter is absolutely teeming with losers and people who have a flat out, straight up loser mentality. They are failing, and they are programmed to fail, and they will continue to fail. We don't really say this stuff because, you don't want to call people losers, but at a certain point you have to, because it's sort of like a doctor getting you to accept the reality of a diagnosis. Something popped last few days or last week with Tom Segura. Kevin, you saw this. Where he started to explain the thread that we want to pull on. What did he say?
Yeah, I don't know if it was a new clip or if it was an old clip that just made its rounds, and my wife sent it to me, and I just thought it was so funny. And the reason I thought it was so interesting, and I had to send it, right away to you, is that he did something that don't see anybody ever do, which was he essentially called some probably not insignificant proportion of his audience losers.
Yeah.
No one does this. No one with a fan base is ever going to say like, hey, a bunch of you people who really like me are losers with, a loser mentality, because they don't want to alienate their fans. They don't want to come across as cruel. There are any number of reasons no one does this, but look, Tom Segura doesn't care. He does not care who he's offending. He's a comedian who makes his living, basically. I mean, he had the entire state of Louisiana wanting him dead with one of his stand-up bits about how we should build a wall around Louisiana because that state sucks so much. This is just what he does. But his point was that he was tired of getting comments from people essentially trying to make him feel bad or guilt him into feeling bad about the life that he lives, and I guess the money that he makes and the opportunities that he has, because they don't have those things. They are struggling with their bills, or they have like any other number of problems. And, he can buy his friend Bert, a $20,000 birthday gift. That's a gag gift and is very funny for the podcast. And meanwhile, like, this guy can't put gas in his car. So, Tom's basically a jerk.
Tom should feel bad. Yeah. He's a jerk. He should feel guilty about any complaint about his very good life. It really speaks to a general theme of how destructive and unhealthy a couple things are. One of them is envy, and the other is resentment. And this is hugely important to being not just a successful creative. There's some unique parts on the creative side that both envy and resentment factor in with, but it's good in general not to go down these paths. And I think we want to talk about why. Number one, if you do, you're going to be a loser.
Well, that was what he was saying. So I just want to finish off by saying that's where this topic came from, was he was saying, look, if you're like, worry about your own thing. Like, if you can't pay for the gas in your car, like, figure it out. Mm-hmm. You need to figure that out. That's your problem that you need to figure out. And you blaming me for the success that I have is a loser mentality. And you are a loser for thinking this way, and you need to be called out for it, because that's that's the way that you're behaving. And until you stop thinking this way and stop being a loser and being so mad that I have what I have and you don't have what you have, you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, and the first element to it is that when you're resentful or envious, neither one does anything to address your problem. Being angry at Bert Kreischer or Tom Segura or anybody else is not going to help you fill your gas tank. It just won't. There's no connection between these things. So all you're doing is focusing your energy on something that is totally irrelevant to the problems that you've got. It's a waste of time. It's a waste of stress. It's a waste of talent. It wouldn't be possible to do something less useful than be envious and resentful. So you're further miring yourself in whatever problems you have by spending even a second worrying about what other people do.
Well, and not only that, it's like, well, what is the goal here? Like, what is the end game? That you feel better about yourself because you made potentially somebody else's life worse for the day, or ruined their day, and made them at least attempted to make them feel bad about themselves. I don't understand really what we're achieving by even engaging in this.
There's this odd mentality that it's all a zero-sum thing, and that if somebody else is doing really well, that means that that you or others must be suffering to balance it out. It doesn't work that way. Life is a lot better now than it was 500 years ago. And that's not because 500 years ago, if it was all the same big pie, there were a lot fewer people back then. They would have been fabulously wealthy with incredible standards of living, and we would have just diluted it over time. Obviously, that didn't happen. Everyone is much better off now than they were a while ago. That's the ultimate proof that it's not a zero-sum thing with wealth or ideas or anything else. We keep producing more of both of them. And thinking about, if you think about wealth in a general sense, not bank account necessarily, just general well-being, like happiness is a form of wealth. Okay. Kevin, what was the video game that you're going to go pick up?
It's Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Remaster.
Crisis Core.
I think it's called
Remaster.
Reunion. I don't know. Whatever. It has a convoluted Square Enix name.
I am going to guess that it's like $55. Is that about right?
I think $49.99.
49.
So with tax, $55. Yeah.
All right. Okay. So here's what's happening. You're driving to that store because that game is worth more to you than $55. And that store would rather have $55 than the game. You swap, and both parties are better off. Both parties have increased happiness because they now have something that they wanted more than the thing that they gave up. This is the creation of wealth in one example, and the creation of happiness in one example. And that's the kind of thing that happens all day long. All day long are exchanges like that. So when Tom Segura buys a gag birthday gift that's the cost of your car, you aren't involved in that transaction in the slightest. It has absolutely nothing to do with you. Maybe you can lament a system in which he can do that, and you're worried about food prices and gas prices, and that's fine. It's totally valid to lament problems, to recognize problems, but they're separate from what's happening in your own life. You can do something to deal with those problems on a meta level. Maybe you get involved in politics. I don't know. Whatever you do, without having the resentment and the envy consume you. Being angry about that is not a personality trait. It's not useful. It does nothing, and it's not a substitute for any kind of action. So you really need to recognize problems, maybe do something to deal with those problems, but at the same time, handle your own shit. You know, it's like Tom said, figure out how to get the gas in your car. You know, and so both of these things can exist, but they're two separate things. And when you conflate them, you ruin yourself, and you are not all that valuable to other people. Nobody likes this, and nobody's looking for it. Nobody wants it. You aren't giving the world anything that it needs. You're kind of just ranting as you kick the can down the road of your own problems. That's just not smart.
Yeah. It is just spewing negativity, which, sometimes you need to get that out. If if it's pent up and you're angry and you're upset and you need to get that out, then you need to get that out in some way. But to live in that, to seethe and to stew and to just live in that is not going to get you.
Oh, it's the worst.
It's not going to get you out of that. Like, that's the thing that needs to be understood. It's like, maybe it does feel good at the time, but day after day after day after day, it's like, how are you ever going to break out of that? And another thing that he said that I thought was really interesting was that there was also this element of it in which I believe the guy or the commenter said something like, well, your fans made you. Like, we made you, which is suggesting, I suppose, in some manner that he owes them something, which
there's an entitlement. Yeah. And we talked about this with people like Jay Schlatt, that weird stan culture-ish stuff where they feel entitled to all sorts of things, from knowing about personal and private stuff to dictating action. It's really a strange mentality.
Well, and it's just fundamentally wrong. It's objectively wrong. Here's why. The person that you're a fan of has already given you the thing that makes you happy. That's why you're a fan of them. Like, Tom Segura's fans already get from Tom Segura joy and entertainment and distraction and all sorts of things that make their lives better. That's why they like him. That's why they're fans of him. So he's already giving them what they want. Transaction over. Like, we are done at this point. That's the fact that you're a fan of a thing means you are getting something from the thing that you're a fan of, whether it's a musician or a comedian or a public intellectual. I don't care what it is, a YouTuber. You're getting the thing from them. That's why you like them.
You are getting the thing.
We're like, we're done. We're done at that point.
Yeah. Yeah, and I want to mention too the creative side and being I'm going to stick with the words. I mean, I was trying not to repeat the same things over and over, but everything really is that we're talking about is an offshoot of resentment and envy. It is really tough. I've known high-end musicians. I mean, people who are trained to the nth degree, virtuosos. They put their lives into the mastery of an instrument and the music for that instrument. And then some boner manufactured at a record label shits out a 3-chord song that makes them world famous. You know, and I was talking to Kevin about music about a week ago, and I like a lot of really garbage songs. And Kevin pointed out that some of those songs are just lists of things.
Yeah.
They're just so like Aaron Lewis, who was the frontman of Stained, and now he's a country artist. He has a song called Northern Redneck, and it's just a list of normal things he does in life, including going to Walmart. Like, this is part of the song, that it's half an hour to a Walmart.
A lot of country music is just listing stuff.
A lot of country music is flat out writing like a bullet list of things on a napkin and then making it sound twangy.
Yeah.
So,
but a lot of people like it. And you like it.
A lot of people like it. I like it. Yeah. I like it a lot. And I listen to virtually no music that takes tremendous talent. There's one Bach sonata I like, and that is about the extent of all classical music that I listen to. Well, obviously, those people are better than, Creedence Clearwater Revival.
Jazz is the big one for me. In
terms of musical talent.
Jazz is like impossible to play. It's just insane, and
it is.
I don't like it at all.
So 2 things are happening right now. The year is ending and a new one is beginning. We're creeping ever closer to the two-faced specter of Janus, marking the transition between departure and arrival. Right now is a natural point to think hard about who you're working with. LinkedIn makes sorting through those end-of-year options much easier, and its network of over 800 million people can be narrowed down to exactly the right person with a quick job post and a series of screening questions. Throw the purple hashtag hiring frame on your profile to show that you've got jobs for the new year. There's a reason why small businesses have rated LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires. Job sites are a crowded marketplace, so that actually means something. LinkedIn helps you find the candidates you want to talk to and faster. Every week, nearly 40 million job seekers visit LinkedIn. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/create. That's linkedin.com/create to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Look, the truth is that every month and every day, they're all equally important, but it does feel good to finish the year strong. So get the people who are going to help you do that and bust into 2023 with confidence. LinkedIn.com/create. Yeah, I played a lot of jazz, and still didn't like it. I played it because it was about the only thing I could play. I had limited opportunities. So it's like be in the jazz band or don't play anything. So, okay, I'll be in the jazz band. Didn't mean I had to like it. I like a couple standards. Birdland by Weather Report is a really cool song. I like that. But jazz is not something I have on my playlists. Danzig is. So really talented people quite often resent successful ones of lesser talent. And I run into this with YouTubers a lot. And let's be honest, there's a lot of successful people on YouTube who make really shitty content.
Yeah.
They make content that is just objectively low talent that sucks. People still like it and love it. That's okay. It's completely fine. I have no problem with it. I don't want to do it. But it's really frustrating. And I'm gonna use Doplex's name here. He wasn't complaining, by the way. He's the perfect example of somebody who makes incredible content. We talked to him about it. He is the YouTuber's YouTuber. He makes such good videos, and he should have 3 million subscribers, and he doesn't. In this system of low talent people succeeding, he should be really pissed off all the time. He should be angry about that and resentful that he's awesome and he's has a fraction of the popularity that garbage YouTubers have. That some girl who opens up a camera on stream and farts in a canning jar and sells it for $89 is, or like the what's that girl who was on Dr. Phil? What do they call her?
Cash Me Outside.
Cash Me Outside. Yeah. The numbers of that she pulled from OnlyFans is shocking. I mean, double-digit millions. It's tremendous amounts of money. Well, hey, a lot of people creatively are probably a little sharper than her. Their art is a little better than hers. People put a lot of time into careers and education and all of this stuff, and they're not pulling $47 million a year. On paper, that's really unfair. And I guess it is, but so what? Who cares? This is the issue. When you get wrapped up in somebody else doing better than you, when you deserve to do better, it's going to kill you. It's going to ruin you. It's going to affect literally everything in your life because it undergirds how you live that life. It's not just the YouTube stuff or anything else creative. When you start thinking in terms of how things are going for somebody else, you lose sight of everything you have to do. Your perspective is so badly skewed that, it's like driving a car and just choosing to look out the passenger side window instead of the front windshield. Well, guess what? You're going to crash real fast. You're not looking where you need to look, and it's not going to work out for you. And that's you're going to brand yourself and mold yourself into being an absolute loser if you obsess over other people's success.
And I would say to the detriment of your own, and to mask the lack of your own, because conversely, you can look up to people as a model to be inspired by, and that is a great thing to do. You can look at other people and say, oh, wow, like they did this and they're doing really well. Maybe there's a room for me to try something similar, or in any domain. I mean, especially, well, YouTube as well as music or whatever. Like, you have to have models. We did this whole video on mimetic desire. If anybody wants to learn about this a little more deeply, watch The Invention of Blame, or The Scapegoat Mechanism, on Vsauce 2, in which we talk about mimetic desire. So there's like this triangular relationship between you, someone else, and like an object. So there's, it goes three ways. That's why it's triangular. And you can play this the bad way, or you can play this the good way. If you play this the bad way, it's Matt, what you're talking about, in which you're looking at, Tom Segura being really successful as a podcaster and a comedian and being mad about that. Or you look at Tom Segura as a really successful comedian and podcaster and think like, that's great for him. His podcast and his comedy brings me joy, and I'm thankful for that. And, maybe him working really hard at that inspires me to work really hard at whatever it is that I'm interested in doing, whether that's something creative or it's just being a good father or mother or whatever it is, member of the community that you're a part of. It doesn't matter. But it seems like with all of this stuff, you can take it one way or the other. And it's like that meme with like the dark, scary fork in the road and then like the bright, sunny fork in the road. Do you know the meme I'm talking about?
I don't think I know that one.
Charles Kahn.
Is it kind of cartoony?
Yeah, it's like a cartoon, and there's a road, and then there's a fork in the road, and to one side is like a dark and spooky way, and the other side is sunshiny and beautiful. But to me, it's a lot like that, and it is this mindset thing where we were talking in the Discord earlier, in which. And I wanted to bring this up because this doesn't have to do entirely with, well, this person, has more money than me and I'm mad about that. The mindset can also be, well, someone discouraged me and now I don't think I'm good enough anymore. And someone mentioned that in our Discord earlier, an artist mentioned being discouraged by somebody else making a comment about their art, which, they took really, really, really badly and were very upset by, and it caused them to stop making any art for a full year because they felt bad about themselves and they felt bad about the art that they were creating because someone else. And
it was reasonable too. That comment, like it was reasonable to feel bad. It wasn't like an oversensitive reaction. Like, no, it was the kind of thing that would make somebody question the art they were doing.
Yeah, but I thought, what was interesting was now like a year later, they're talking about how they really regret that. Like they're getting back into their art. They regret having put it down, which was something that I was talking about a couple episodes ago in my own experience with the cartooning and how I put that down for like a decade, which is insane.
Yeah.
But the point is that all that changed was mindset. Nothing else changed. To be creative and to let your your passion out and to work on a skill and to create things. The difference was this fork in the road. It was one side said, this person said I suck, so I guess I suck, so I'm going to quit. Or it's this other side that says like, this person said I sucked, but who cares what they think? Like, I'll get better. Yeah. Maybe I do suck, but that, could make me get better. We talked to Austin Evans years ago about this, where he talked about being made fun of for his appearance, like in his early YouTube videos. And he took that criticism seriously and decided to change the way, like he got his hair cut, or I don't remember the exact things that he did differently. Maybe he started dressing a little nicer or whatever it was. And instead of just quitting, because that just quitting is you're robbing yourself and everyone else of the thing that you want to do. But the difference, again, just coming back to this whole topic of discussion, just has to do with mindset. And that's really what it is.
Yeah, it does. And something else that we had as part of that conversation is I pointed out that a tremendous number of artists, well, a lot greater than in normal life, have something about their personalities that sidesteps this problem entirely. There are a lot of artists who are narcissists to a heavy, heavy degree. There are a lot of artists who are somewhere on the spectrum. There are all sorts of things that make a portion of artists not care at all about what other people think or about what other people are doing. And it can be in like an autism sort of way where you're just not really even, it's not on your radar at all. Or it can be a narcissism way where you don't care. Somebody could put it right in front of your face and you wouldn't care. But think about that. They plow forward because they are not burdened by any of the problems that we're talking about, whether it's being sensitive to criticism, whether it's even caring if somebody else is succeeding or not. There's no resentment or envy when you don't care about anybody else. This is pretty common with artists. Well, most of us don't have one of those traits, and so we do have to deal with these issues. But we can kind of learn from the other people and say, well, maybe there's a way that we can navigate this in such a way that it won't harm us. And I think ultimately that's where we want to go with this discussion is what do you do about it and how do you think to avoid these problems? But I want to really quickly tell a super boring story that I used to work in roughly the education policy / media field. I got a press release about a study that had come out that was very, very negative about the achievement gap that this something showed, where the gap was getting bigger between performance of different groups. And I don't remember if it was boys and girls or if it was an ethnic thing. I don't know. But it was these groups, the gap between them is wider. All very negative. And I actually went through the study and checked it out. Every single group in the study had improved over the last year. The issue was that some had improved more than others. And this entire press release was based on the resentment that the rising tide rose at a different level for different ships. And think, okay, it would be great if we could get them all to the same level of achievement. But can't we stop for a second and celebrate the fact that everybody you studied is better off? That's really significant. That's really significant. And this advocacy group had no interest in that at all. They were like, but, and listed all the reasons why that wasn't important. And it was the strangest thing to me to see this thick stack, like a 40-page study showing that everybody is doing better than they were a few years ago, and have somebody look at that and say, my God, we have a problem. We don't care about that. We care that X is better off than Y. It doesn't mean that everybody improving means you ignore, the different rates of improvement. But both things can be true at once. You can celebrate this and work a little harder to fix that. And it was totally a mindset thing, but they were in the business of complaining and pointing out problems. That was really frustrating. And it was the beginning of the point where I realized, like, hey, I don't fit in with a lot of the organizations in this sphere. I probably don't have much of a home in this career. Then I continued to do it for like 10 years. But that was a wake-up call kind of thing. And it's just so common. It's so common for people to think this way. So, Kevin, what's the first step to not thinking this way and not being a loser? What keeps you from having the loser mentality?
Well, I think that if I could go back to what Tom Segura was implying or trying to get across, it was to take care of your own problems first. Like, yeah, that's what I focus on. Like, I don't know what everybody else, is going through, but I do know this: everybody has problems, and they are at varying levels of importance. They are at like varying levels of severity. It doesn't matter who you are. It could be with work, it could be with money, it could be with your family, it could be with a boyfriend or a girlfriend, it could be with yourself. Everybody has some pile of problems that they have to get through. What I do is really focus on what I have to do every day, what I have to do today to set myself up to be in a good spot tomorrow. And that's kind of it. I mean, there'll be some stuff that I will try to at least plan out a little bit in advance if I have to. Like, if it really has to be something that, like, okay, a month from now, this thing needs to happen, make sure that I set myself up so that can occur. That's important, but that's rare. For the most part, in my life at least, every day is the day to get the stuff done that I have to get done to set myself up to be in a better spot tomorrow, because who knows what is going to, it's like that water pitcher analogy that we talked about, where all of a sudden, someone else is stealing your water and that you couldn't have anticipated, or someone else or some other thing or some catastrophe or some malevolence or something that you have no control over. is severely ruining your life in a way that you could not have anticipated. So it's not like you couldn't have prepared for it. It just is what it is. But man, is there a lot of stuff every single day, at least in my life, that I know that I could do that will at least make handling those pressures a little bit more manageable than they would have been if I also had that list of stuff that I ignored. That's the big thing to me, is like the amount of time that is wasted on something like, feeling upset because somebody else has something that you don't. It's like, gosh, there's only so much time in the day. There's only so much opportunity for you to do something meaningful. That's not a good way to spend any of it.
No, it isn't. And there are three things that I think everybody needs to realize at the very beginning of this. The first one is that everybody has problems. You said that. Everybody has a biggest problem, and everybody's biggest problem is their biggest problem. Now, that sounds like pseudo profound, but when you think about it, it doesn't matter if my biggest problem is like, it doesn't compete, Kevin, with your biggest problem. It just doesn't, because for each of us, it's the biggest problem. And it's important to realize that. But I think, too, that you and I process all this stuff a lot better, or not better, but have an easier time processing it because we have such a focus on meaning. That softens all of these sharp edges that we're talking about, that we default to thinking about what matters to us and why. We don't get wrapped up so much in what other people are doing because we're pretty happy finding the meaning in the things that we do. And that can be really simple stuff, like I talk to the nth degree about outdoor work. I like moving stones. When I put 18 5-gallon buckets in my car 2 weeks ago in one trip and got them home. And I was really happy about that. That made my day that I could fit all 18 of those in my Subaru Impreza sedan. So I don't have a big car in one trip. And it made my day. I went to bed happy. I didn't think about how, like, my brother has a pickup truck and it would have been way easier. I didn't envy his pickup truck. I could have been annoyed and frustrated by having to sit for a minute and figure that out, because it did take a minute to figure it out. I couldn't just load stuff up and roll away. I'm like, oh no, I got to be careful about this, and kind of had to convince the guy who I was getting things from to be patient with me as I did painstakingly Jenga this stuff in my car. But yeah, it was something I was happy about. I'm driving home and I'm thinking like, oh, I have the spatial awareness skills to solve this problem. I feel good about that. Now, is it going to be my epitaph? Is it going to go on my tombstone? Be like, ooh, here lies a man who really knows how to put buckets in a car. Like, no, it's not important. It's not important to anybody but me in that moment. But you can pull meaning out of those little things. I pull meaning out of having all the leaves off my lawn. I take all the little things that get done and think, all right, I'm a tiny bit better off than I was 10 minutes ago. Like, honestly, what more do you need than being better off than you were 10 minutes ago? I don't know what you've been sipping, but you've got it all wrong. It's time to commit to the Leaf. We've embraced the smoothness and surprising pick-me-up that tea provides. I literally drink it all day long, nearly a gallon a day, and it powers me through research, script writing, and forums on websites that I refuse to name here. But we don't drink normie NPC tea. We drink cultured and refined anime tea from the Dragon's Treasure. Kevin still likes the gunpowder green called Space Cowboy, and I've sampled nearly 40 Dragon's Treasure teas at this point. Lately, I've been slamming black teas like Kentucky Bourbon and Liquefied Berserk Despair. Scottish Breakfast is deep and peaty, and I smooth it over with Sebastian's Morning Earl Grey, which Has the best vanilla cream taste I think I've ever had in a cup. Give me a pot of that with a hot meatball sub from Sal's Pizza and Brooks Barbecue Chicken to wash down my last meal on death row. I highly recommend the sampler packs. You'll want to try everything just like I did. I literally have not had one tea that I wouldn't be happy to reorder. The Dragon's Wings membership fuels new tea experimentation, and the Tea of the Month Club provides a regularly scheduled surprise. And when you order from the Dragon's Treasure using code CREATE, you'll get 10% off your order. That's 10% off using the code CREATE at thedragonstreasure.com. The link's in the description.
I have two things that I thought of. First of all, I think it's really funny picturing some like onlookers being super impressed by your bucket Jenga-ing skills and just like chattering amongst themselves like, man, did you see that guy? How many buckets he fit?
Well, this guy
that is awesome.
I think I told you this. I think I told you how pissed off I was that I roll up and the guy's like, you're going to have to make 3 trips with 6 each. And I was offended. I was like,
yeah,
I really felt like he was.
It was a challenge.
It was an indictment of my ability to solve this problem.
Your bucket stacking skills. Yeah.
Yeah. I was all upbeat about it, but in my head, I'm thinking like, who do you think you're talking to right now? It's like, sit down and let me do this. And when I roll away here, you're going to feel like an absolute idiot. Hopefully he did.
Okay. But I have 2 quick concepts. I know introducing a concept nearly an hour into this, let alone 2, is probably not a great idea, but I don't care. One is that I just wrote down this phrase. This probably is actually called something, but I'm just going to make up my own thing for it, and I'll call it the resentment ladder. So if you want to play the resentment game, here's a thing that people do not understand well, I don't think, is that no matter where you are on whatever ladder you see yourself on, there's going to be people above you who can be just as resentful as you are, and people below you who can be just as resentful as you are. Like, it doesn't matter where you are on this ladder. If you want to play that game, you're going to play that. Like, you can play that game. So, like, if there's someone like, Tom Segura, who you think, wow, this guy has it all. If Tom Segura wants to play that game, he can look around and say, well, I don't have as much as, this guy. Now, I'm resentful too. Because, what I have is fine, but, I'm no Dave Chappelle, or I'm no, my podcast numbers are nothing compared to Joe Rogan's or whatever. Like, you can play that game no matter who you are looking at. That game can almost indefinitely be played no matter where you are. So I think it's important to recognize that, because it seems like people get trapped in this mode of thinking in which, well, whatever rung of the ladder they're on, the people above them are the problem. Where it's like, well, you are likely many, many rungs above somebody else who consider you to be the problem. And you're the jerk.
Yeah.
Because you have, a PS4 and they don't. Whatever it is. So you can play that game no matter where you are. It's not exclusive to your rung or anybody else's rung. Like, everybody can play the rung. Anybody can play the game no matter what rung they're on, which is why it's a stupid game.
It's a stupid game.
It is this completely subjective, arbitrary game to play. Here's the other thing that I really want to say, that probably could have been its own podcast episode, but whatever. I'll just introduce it here anyway. There is like a little bit of a flow chart, I think, when it comes to understanding.
Okay.
That's has 3 levels. The first level is naive, or naivety. So you don't know anything about anything. You're naive to the subject. The next level is cynicism. So you know kind of enough about the subject to know what's bad about it and, why it sucks. I think the next level after that is wisdom, in which you know enough about it to contextualize why parts of it, might suck, but ultimately you can integrate it basically and not be bothered by it. I think so. The reason that I'm mentioning this is that I think that it's totally healthy and okay, no matter what the subject is, whether it's this thing or any other podcast we do, to be at the cynicism stage. It's okay to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I was really, really cynical when I was younger. I remember distinctly a teacher in high school. I don't know what he said to me, and I don't know what I said in response that was like snarky and bratty. And he just said, "Well, Lieber, always the cynic." That's what he said. Always the cynic. So believe me when I say that that's just a stage of your development. Yeah. And I'll be cynical, and it's not like I'm past that on all subjects. I'm sure there are plenty of things that I'm stuck at the cynicism stage on, and I really don't grasp yet. The reason that I'm mentioning this, well, it's twofold. It's one is to just say that it is okay to be at the cynicism stage and call Matt and I out of touch boomers. That's like the essentially the default sort of response if you're at that cynicism stage, to say, you guys don't know what you're talking about. You're out of touch. It's much harder for me, or whatever it is. That's fine. And that is totally, totally okay. But it is to say that there is, and I really believe this, a stage beyond that. There is eventually a goal beyond cynicism, which you can call wisdom, or you can call understanding, or something like that, where that negativity is kind of, you're unburdened from. It just doesn't bother you anymore.
That's what it is there's a comfort with the cynicism and the problems and the resentment and the envy. It doesn't go away. Like, you don't stop noticing it. I've put, at this point, 15 solid years into the broad category of writing. You know how much stupid shit I read every single day? Dumb things from bad writers, 95% of whom have a better life than I do. They're so dumb. They make the worst stuff. We occasionally see some very funny threads on Twitter where authors get ripped for writing stupid books, but they're massively successful. It's not that I don't look at a thing and I didn't stop thinking that something was undeserved. No, I do on some level think it is. The difference is I don't really care. I'm so comfortable with the fact that things work out for other people in a different way than they work out for me. And all that matters is that I do the stuff that I'm capable of doing and want to do. That's it. When you hit that point and you start to think, if I'm envious and resentful, then the problem is in my head. It's not a society problem. It's a problem with me processing society. When you just focus on your own stuff, you're just unburdened. It's like your soul being saved creatively. There's a lightness that permeates your personality, where it's like, oh yeah, now I'm free to create. I'm free to do my art. I'm free to read the books I want to read. I'm free to listen to my idiotic country list songs. And it doesn't really matter. What matters is that I like doing the thing. It's an amazing thing. And so that is something that doesn't usually happen when somebody is 16. There's an element of healthy piss and vinegar, as the saying goes, that sloshes around for a lot of years. But at a certain point, you almost compartmentalize that and say, you recognize that it's yes, but it's yes, and it's yes, all these problems exist. But at the same time, here's my life. And I'm going to focus on the things that are in my life, or the things that I care about. It's the hurdle that everybody needs to get over. And if you don't, you are going to be in trouble. You're going to be super stressed, and you're not going to have that lightness and that freedom to create anything. You just will not do it.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Is like, we're not saying that you can't still recognize that things suck because that will always happen. Because things do suck. Plenty of things suck. And you can, say, well, that movie sucks or this person sucks or whatever. The difference is that you can, that won't prevent you from doing what you need to do. It won't. You won't be burdened by things sucking. You won't feel crushed by other people's success and your lack of success or what stage of development they're at. And you won't be, like Tom Segura was saying, a loser. You're not a loser if you're still fulfilling your potential.
Yeah.
If you are still living your life up to your potential, no matter what degree of success comes from that, you cannot be a loser. It's not possible. It's not possible because you're doing what you can do and you're not allowing other people or really, that poison of other people's
it is poison.
Success or fame or their numbers, and your numbers aren't as good. And it's like, okay.
It rusts you from the inside out. It oxidizes you and it makes everything weaker. It is just like rust. Where the metal that it touches gets crumbly and weak. And it's a very slow process. It's not like you can whip yourself up into a frenzy on Wednesday and then on Thursday you have a meltdown over, resenting somebody else or something else. No, this happens drip by drip over a period of years. And it so slowly alters your path. But there are a lot of ways out of it that we haven't covered. And I want to say, since we're getting deeper into the time, one of those things is changing your focus to not only you, but small increments of you. And there's a mathematical parallel here with early on in calculus, you do finding the slope of a curve, a line that is tangent to a curve. And it's similar to determining the acceleration of a thing. On an individual given point on a curve, there is a line that is tangent to it. And what is the slope of that line? It doesn't have anything to do with the curve as a whole. It's taking a measurement at that one point in time. And you have to do that with yourself. I said the thing about being better off than you were 10 minutes ago. That is absolutely a real interval that you need to think about. You do your laundry, you put it away, that's a small task. Your life is a tiny bit better than it was before you did the laundry. When you focus on the trajectories using those little tiny intervals, you're pretty much winning all the time. And when things are getting bad, because you're thinking in small intervals, you can tend to combat the bad things and lessen their badness. I talked at one point about a system in a book about baseball psychology, which it pops into my head because I spoke to the author again yesterday, where he has a red, yellow, and green light system for evaluating your mood. And when you recognize that you're in a yellow light scenario, you're getting kind of close to spinning out of control, that's an opportunity to stop that. And maybe you don't go to green. Maybe you don't improve things and have a peak day, but you stop yourself from going into the red. And that's a win. That's a win. Stress you don't have is just as good as happiness you do have. So that's from thinking in the micro intervals. And you really start to value the little things that you do. Think about this with making food. Does anybody inject the reality of their cooking skills into the way they cook food? So here's what I mean. Let's say you're 20 years old. You've never lived on your own. You're in your dorm, and all you can really do is make mac and cheese with a coffee maker. I'm not making this up because I've been there. You are objectively one of the shittiest chefs in the world. You have no skills. You are garbage, and you have a limited capacity to do anything good. You don't sit there and think, well, I suck at this. I am going to half-ass this food and it's going to taste like garbage. And that's fine because I'm a third percentile chef in the world. No, you do the best you can so it tastes the best you can get it to taste. When you're cooking in a kitchen, you are not Gordon Ramsay, but you try as hard as you can because you want your food to taste good. You really put effort into that. And it doesn't matter that you're not the best. It doesn't matter if you're even terrible at it. You're still valuing that task that you're doing, and if it turns out well, you're like, yeah, that food tastes better. Food that you make that you enjoy almost always tastes better than objectively better food that you get at a restaurant because you made it. But you got to think in those little momentary things. You've got to think, has my trajectory improved between noon and now, between yesterday and now? This may be a Jordan Peterson thing that I'm thinking of. I don't know, because so many people talk about these types of things. But the lesson was that you don't compare yourself to anybody else. You compare yourself to who you were yesterday. Am I making that up, Kevin, or is that something that was out there?
I've heard that before, yeah.
Yeah, it's completely and totally true. It's totally true. Yesterday, I needed another hook for towels in my downstairs bathroom. I had one, I put it up, and then I had 2 hooks for towels. I doubled my towel hook wealth in an hour. It's the stupidest thing, and it's totally insignificant, and it doesn't change my life at all. And the number of people who use my bathroom will, for the rest of my life, probably number under 5 total. That's the reality of it. And all the other 4 are not going to notice this thing. But I felt good because compared to yesterday, I have better towel storage in my bathroom. Like, sweet. That's a win. That's a win. I've done some really fantastic things in the world. This should not register as being at the top of the win column. Well, when I write my obituary, it won't be. But when I'm comparing yesterday to today, that's the improvement that matters. That one little thing. I went through some vinyl records. About, I'd say 40% of them, kind of had to go. I've been kicking that can down the road for years. Well, I finally went through and decided what I wanted to keep and what I wanted to get rid of. I feel awesome about that. I got that task done. These are things that don't matter. How many records I have, how many towel hangers in my bathroom I have. No, but I feel great about it because compared to yesterday, my trajectory has improved. My acceleration is in the right direction. It's a much healthier way to go about things. You feel better. You're constantly winning. Occasionally you take an L, but when you do, pretty quickly, you usually do something that is a fat W that erases it. It's extremely rare to have a string of losses that drive you into a bad place. And when that does happen, that's when you take a step back and you're like, okay, this isn't normal. Whatever's happening right now, maybe I need to reassess, and there's something going on that shouldn't. I'm super tired, or my health is bad, or I need to recognize that I'm sick and need to just rest. I don't know. But generally, you win most of the time. And when you lose, you win so quickly that it doesn't matter and you just don't feel bad. So you're focused on your own progress, your own micro progress. Jen mentioned micro goals and that's how you do it, is you think in those micro terms, and then occasionally you check in on the macro. You focus on the little tiny short-term little interval stuff. Every once in a while you check in on the big stuff, and overwhelmingly you will find that things have improved compared to the last time you checked in. The really successful people who take care of their bodies and train physically or lose weight, they think about micro decisions, where it's like, what am I going to eat for lunch? That's as micro decision as it gets if you're trying to build muscle or lose weight. And then, once a month they'll weigh in. Well, guess what? When you've had a month of really good decisions, it's going to pay off. We want to help you make something and mean something. And we say that phrase all the time because when you're making something and you know it means something, even if it's just to you, that's when you feel pretty good about what you're creating. The support for the Create Unknown in recent weeks has been incredible. Animators, artists, musicians, YouTubers, aspiring filmmakers, comedians, it is crazy how talented everybody in this community is. Consider joining the Create Unknown Patreon. Every dollar that comes through goes straight into the podcast and its community. That means more highlights videos. It means a big Minecraft project that's on the way. And eventually we'd like to manufacture custom piss bottles so you never have to leave your battle station. And being a patron unlocks participation in all of our live recordings. You've seen the roster of guests we've had. Having access to their minds is a unique opportunity. You can go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown or click the link that's in the description. Every little bit helps, and your support means absolutely everything to us. Patreon.com/thecreateunknown, links in the description. We appreciate you, Space Cowboys.
Yeah, just real quick, I wanted to mention the bricklayer thing we talked about earlier.
Oh, yes.
Because I think this is the last thing I can think of that is related to this topic of mindset in particular. So there is this really old parable or whatever about these like 3 bricklayers. I'm going to simplify it the way that I've simplified it in my head. And I'm not going to read it or anything. I'm just going to, here's how I remember it. And so I'm just going to say it how I remember it, because this is the way that I think it might be useful for other people, to kind of illustrate how the mindset thing leads to dramatically different results on the individual level, emotional results on the individual level. So you have these 2 bricklayers. One of them is absolutely miserable, and the other one has a big grin on his face. And when you ask the 2 bricklayers what they're doing, the one who's miserable just talks about how much the job sucks, and the bricks are so heavy, and my hands are all cut and calloused, and it rained this morning, so it's all muddy, and now my pants are all muddy, and everything about this job sucks. Then you ask the bricklayer with the smile on his face, well, what are you so happy about? And that guy says, I'm building a temple. So the difference here is that the person who is stuck in the mud, essentially, is just thinking about how terrible every little bit of minutia is involved in this task. Whereas the person who is thinking about the meaning of the task, which is the goal of the task, which is the purpose of the task, which is like ultimately the reason for doing the task, is thrilled to be associated with building something great. Because you can't, things that are great have to be built one brick at a time. That's the whole point. And you can either think about how much dragging the bricks around sucks, and all day sucks, and tomorrow's going to suck, and the next day is going to suck. Or you could think about, hey, like I am doing a task that has great purpose and meaning and value, and people are going to see, and everyone's going to look at, everybody in the community is going to look at in awe at this temple. And, I am the one I'm one of the people who helped build that thing. They're doing the same thing. These 2 people are doing the same thing with completely different outlooks as to what they're doing. One thinks it's just meaningless garbage and is miserable, and the other one is imbued with the meaning of the task and is invigorated by it and is not being, crushed, like we've said a million times, by the weight of the negativity swirling in their head around the thing that they have to do. And this extends really well, I think, to creative work, because I think a lot of people don't realize that basically every creative person that you talk to, or I should say successful creative person, whether it's a writer or a musician, or especially writers, they will always almost overwhelmingly tell you how much they hate writing. Or like the YouTubers, it's a burden to them. Like, it sucks. Like, it's not fun. It's like kind of a miserable task. It's not a vacation. It's a slog, to say the least. Making YouTube videos is a slog, to say the least. But all of them do it because they have that other bricklayer's perspective. They are working towards their own temple, whether it's the next YouTube video or the next song that they're trying to write, whatever it is. That's the difference.
I think that you can have both of those perspectives at the same time too.
Yeah.
And just not be bothered by the bad one. You know, I feel this with the outdoor stuff that I do. I hate almost every bit of it. There's not a single thing that I do outside that's fun. If I could make a list of the things that I would want to do in life, nothing that I do outdoors would crack the top 500. And I'm not kidding. You know, I went down to my parents' place. My mom has a horse, and you've got to trim around the electric fence because when weeds grow up high enough, if they hit the fence, then it shorts the fence and it stops being a functional electric fence. Well, guess what? Horses dump all the time. You're cruising around with a string trimmer and you inevitably hit horse shit. This is going at a rapid pace, and even with a face mask on with a fine grill, you are vaporizing feces with this brush cutter. And it blasts in your face, it blasts through the mesh, and blasts inevitably into your mouth. So I'm going around this fence very slowly, filling my mouth with horse shit. It's not great. There's nothing good about any of this. But when you're done, you're like, hey, that's cleaned up and that's nice. And I got this done and I feel great about it. And it's that bricklayer kind of thing. It's grueling stuff. All of that is true. You know, with spending 400 hours to make a good 10-minute video, like you've detailed that in the past. It is grueling to go through so many books, and maybe you spend a day reading something, and when you get to the end of it, you find out that that whole day was rendered useless. That you pulled on a thread that ended up going nowhere, or contradicted what you thought you'd figured out. And then you've lost a day, and what do? Everything sucks about all of it, except doing it and completing it is amazing. You're part of creating something or doing it all yourself. And that's the temple, you know? So it's not that the first bricklayer is wrong. His hands are just as beat up and he's just as sore. But he's obsessed with that element of it. There's another thing that popped into my head when you said the bricklayer story. I'm going to really brutalize this in paraphrasing because I simply don't remember the details. And this is something I pulled from an arm wrestling documentary. About, I think, John Bergenk. If you're familiar with arm wrestling, you know John Bergenk. He's a legend. There's something like a man-eating tiger that's attacking a village, and a guy commits to going out and killing this tiger. And he finds the tiger, and it chases him and kind of runs him the edge of a cliff and backs him up, and he slips down, and the tiger is leaning over him, and he's hanging on this ledge, and in front of him is a blackberry bush, and there's big blackberry on it. And he's holding on by one hand, and he takes his other hand and grabs the blackberry and eats it, and it's the best blackberry that he's ever had in his life. That's the end of the story, and that's the kind of subtly powerful thing is that he had this tiny little moment. Didn't matter that it was embedded in a dangerous situation and one that'll probably end in tragedy. This tiny, tiny little portion of one thing, he had a great result from it. He pulled that W by stumbling on a really good blackberry. And that's not much. It's not nearly as significant as, you know, probably getting eaten by this tiger or falling to his death. I don't know. Neither one of those is good. But that micro moment was amazing. It's a really extreme example of focusing on those micro moments. You know, when I'm done with this podcast, I am going to load cardboard boxes in my car and throw them in my brother's dumpster. This will clean out a portion of the back room that I've been streaming in. That's awesome. I'm going to be really happy to get rid of those boxes because it's time to get rid of the boxes. That's not going to go in my obituary. That's not relevant to the video that Kevin and I are working on, but it's a good thing. And an hour from now, I will be boxless. My back room will be better than it was the last time I streamed. There'll be less garbage in the back. That's all I can do. So it's a mix of the bricklayer's parable there, where you really think about the meaning of what you're doing and whether that matters more than the sucky parts. And can you acknowledge those sucky parts without getting swallowed by them, without getting resentful of the guy in a suit walking to his do-nothing job at Twitter headquarters, where he's basically working at an adult daycare and provides no value to his business. I've just described about 92% of all jobs in media. You don't resent that guy. You just acknowledge that you're doing a thing and you have to do it well and you want to do it well. So it's that, and it's developing that micro focus in a healthy way. You know, you equally don't get obsessed over the tiniest little thing, but you do focus on those little tiny intervals and think, what can I do in the next 5 minutes, hour, afternoon, week that is going to solve my problems or make my life better? If you can get in this mindset, you will not be a loser. You can't lose. You absolutely cannot lose. And you'll start to see all the people around you trapped in the mindsets that you left behind. And you can't do a lot to pull them out of it. You can't really help people a ton with this. They kind of develop it as they develop it, if they develop it. But you start to see it and feel, kind of bad, because you know that they are saddling and weighing down their own achievements and potential. And that sucks. You don't want to do that. You don't want that to be you. Don't be a loser. And it takes some work. You really have to think about this stuff all the time, but eventually it becomes a habit and you don't think about it at all. You're just plain happy and productive, and that's it.
Well, I think that we have some questions from the patrons that we should hit.
Oh, yeah, we do. This is from Ducky. How do you cope when someone you love is affected by the result of your failures on the path of being successful? That's a really good question. And that's a tough one. Nobody's ever loved me, so I'm going to throw this to Kevin.
Yeah. I don't know. Quite honestly, that is a really specific question that I don't think that I have personally encountered either. I think that the best that you can do.
I have.
You have? I don't think I have.
I have a lot. Yeah, not so much in like this thing went disastrously, but me doing stuff like I've been so stressed out and angsty and anxiety filled and all of that absolutely affects the people around you, whether it's friends or family or relationships or whatever. So you can be.
I don't think I understood the question. I see what you're saying.
Well, I mean, I think Ducky's saying, like, let's use an extreme example where, somebody risks it all on a business venture and it blows up and now, like, mom and dad's retirement are gone. I don't think either of us have been in a spot like that, but I've certainly failed at doing a great job along the way. Even when I've been improving and going towards success, there have been times where I've kind of failed at doing it well in a way that's affected others. You can definitely feel guilty about that. And I have. I've made other people's lives harder at different points. But it's really similar to what we just talked about. Like, you can sit there and wallow in the guilt and feel like shit and apologize profusely and all of that, or you can stop and think, what am I doing that makes this problem, and what can I do differently to avoid it? That's really all you can do.
Yeah, I think that's good. Being mindful of it being a problem to begin with is a much bigger like head start than you might think it is.
It is. And communicating well with the people who could be affected by the things you do, that's big too. Before you start a thing, if you can get their support or acknowledgement of any risks you're taking, that's big, because nobody likes to be surprised. Surprise is bad. So just plain communicating can alleviate any of those feelings that come from failure and its fallouts. Dan Latch, sounds like a goofy question, but it's really not. He says, can I still be a recreational hater? That's a real question.
I mean, I don't.
Is it healthy? Is it healthy to? So let's say we mentioned commentary YouTubers a bunch. Can you have a career where you're kind of ripping on people? Like, is that okay? Is that ultimately unhealthy?
I don't know. I
was hoping you had an answer because I don't know if I have one.
Because for me, I would never do any of that. So like, it would be very easy for me being me to say, like, that's not a good way to live your life. Because it's not something I would do, but I don't want to say that as like a general rule when it's possibly okay for other people. So I don't know.
Let's soften it and generalize it. Because being a hater is really just a certain brand of being a critic. And you can be a critic in a healthy way. You can be a skeptic and a critic in a healthy way. And I think that's where I would take it, is that, yeah, you can be critical in some capacity, whether it's your job or whether it's just the first step that you tend to take when you look at something, without being consumed by it. You know, commentary is weird because you actually have to look for things to criticize to have content. You know, that's a tough way to live. It's almost like being an ambulance chasing lawyer. You know, it's like, it's just not ultimately amazing, but it certainly can work.
Yeah, I don't correlate thoughtful criticism with being a hater. That doesn't seem like they're the same thing. Yeah. And as somebody who has been online for a decade, it's rare to come across thoughtful criticism. It's really valuable when you do, and really illuminating when you do. Awesome. But holy cow, is it rare? So that certainly is like the exception is not making the rule on that one. I think for the mostly being a hater is just frivolous, and not all that useful. But I mean, if it's entertaining, that's useful. So I don't know. That's why I don't have like a really good answer on this one.
Well, Charles Kahn asks if it's wrong to savor people's failures because there's a lot of lessons in failure. I feel almost like that's a similar kind of thing where you should acknowledge people's failure. I think that bad examples are just as good examples, and often a lot better. Some people are fantastic examples of how not to live. We talked about this with teachers. I probably learned more about education and teaching from seeing shitty teachers and why they were awful than really good ones and drawing the lessons from them. So I think looking at and analyzing failures is great. But doesn't it seem like, Kevin, it doesn't seem like when you obsess over other people's failures and take a shocking amount of joy and schadenfreude in failures, that's not healthy?
Yeah, no, because I think it's the same thing. It's the same exact thing of just obsessing over other people while you're ignoring the things that you could be doing to make your life better. Yeah. It seems like a cope for the most part.
Well, Conrad's got the last one. Are you a loser if your goal is to be a loser and you've successfully achieved your goal of being a loser? This is a good Vsauce 2 paradox level question for you.
That is, yeah, the loser paradox.
It is. It's like the Bertrand Russell barber paradox. It's kind of similar, but yeah, if your goal is to lose and you lose, then haven't you won?
So the Washington Generals are the greatest winners of all time, or at least as equally successful as the Harlem Globetrotters. Yeah.
Yes, that is the paradox, is that they are exactly in the same position, aren't they?
I guess so. I mean, I wonder what they get paid. Do they still play? Is this like an old reference? Nobody even knows who the Washington Generals are anymore. Do they still play?
I mean, I don't think the Harlem Globetrotters have the presence in culture that they had.
They used to, yeah,
when we were kids. Yeah, but I think that they still play the Generals when they play.
Yeah. So you folks are going to have to Google this if you have no idea what I'm talking about. But basically, really quick, the Harlem Globetrotters are almost like a circus version of basketball, where they do amazing tricks with the basketball, and traditionally they would play against a team, like a patsy team called the Washington Generals, who they would just beat every single time. And that was part.
Yeah, they were good at traditional basketball, but totally overwhelmed by all the circus stuff and the tricks and all of that.
And that was goofy. The show. That was the show you go to. You go to see the Harlem Globetrotters, and one team is like amazing and doing like full court shots and behind the back stuff. And then the other team are these lamos called the Washington Generals. And they always lose. And the Globetrotters always win. Charles Kahn says the Generals are jobbers, to use wrestling lingo. Yes, they are jobbers. Okay, I think that was our last question, right?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Okay. All right, we're good. I think that we hit everything. Again, I'll say, real quick, if you're at your cynicism stage, that's fine. It's healthy, but consider the progress that can be made. Eventually, it could take years. It could take a decade. It could take a decade.
More than that.
I
was a loser forever.
Yeah, but eventually,
I was a lifelong loser.
There are ways out of that. There are ways out of cynicism and loser mentality. It doesn't have to be like that forever. So, thanks to all of our patrons for hanging out. We will be back next week. Thanks to for those great questions as well. We'll be back next Tuesday. And thanks to Charles Kahn for making memes on the fly. We'll have to post. I'll post one of
That's right.
I'll post a couple of these on Twitter if you guys want to see those. And I'll also try to post the Tom Segura clip on Twitter as well, so everybody can see that, so they have a frame of reference for what we started the episode talking about. If you want to become a patron and support the show, go to patreon.com/thecreateunknown. We'll be back next week, next Tuesday, here live on Discord. Until then, see you, Space Cowboys.
Thanks for listening to The Create Unknown. We make this show with the support of our patrons. 100% of that goes directly to keeping episodes going every week, and the recent support has been amazing. Sid Poke, NRM, Venture Addicts, Weezer Good, you all really do make this show happen. Thank you to the Tots and Dumpster crew, old and new, who save tiny little lives every month. Thank you to our grizzled, battle-hardened child infantry. Clemente de los Santos, Dan the Latch, Demetrius Andrews, Erica, Farrakhan, Jen Mefasanti, Kevin Menard, Mikhail Steinke, Monahim, Natsu, Penny Peddler, Risebread, Ryan Kinder, Samuel Manser, Sean S., Sean Malone, and Tom Videoger. And a tremendous shout out to our elite baby gang commanders: Atrocious Guff, Kat, Dojangles, Graham Robertson, James Gallagher, Jeff Davis, Orange Vanilla Coke, Patrick Pister, TCU's personal pilot, Andy, Ryan Carroll, Baseweight, Vinthos, Yeetus Deletus, Jonas Walter, Nathan Robinson, Jelksies, and of course, Trevstead. You are the elite. Thank you as well to our indentured servants, producer-editor Ben Webster, Minecraft mogul Laterman, Discord kitten wrangler Conrad, and producer emeritus Dan Yoshua. Thanks to Baseweight for use of Created in the Unknown for the opening theme. Thanks to Electro Voice for giving us mics to sound good on top of it. And a special thanks to Main Gear for powering all of our PC endeavors. The Create Unknown is an Unknown Media production in partnership with Studio 71.